Hello, everybody. This is your host, Christian, and today we have Marco. Marco, welcome to the Ledger Show.
Thank you, Christian. Glad to be here. Very excited.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, Marco, do you want to introduce yourself and tell to the audience what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm Marco. I'm a senior product manager in Freenow. Been working in finance and fintech related topics for around 4 years. Actually been focused on how to scale processes and building tools and features for marketplaces. So I also have an experience in a food delivery company that I worked before. And now, supporting Freenow on building the greatest mobility app in Europe.
That's quite interesting. I had a lot of conversation with fintech people or product leaders in fintech, and they are working for a lot of platforms and marketplaces. Where does this need come from? Is it just because it's a new trend, or it's because it's important for platform and marketplaces to have this?
I'll say that for marketplaces, this fintech organization appears because the large number the large data sets that they need to manage in order to proceed with the invoices and all the subsequent financial processes and so on. So that's where the product leader is the one with the finance knowledge and coming with the tech team, alongside the tech team, building something that actually provides the company something secure to proceed with their operations, to scale, and to keep the business ongoing. Because imagine before how we were by doing things manually, like invoices, and then everything appears with macros. Then ERPs pop up, and everyone was moving to ERPs, and now building. ERPs are great, and it's kind of the baseline to build something, but then you will see when you're managing bigger and bigger data sets that sometimes your processes are taking longer than your SLA. And I believe that when fintech out of the sudden appears and said like, okay, let's build something that actually meet our SLAs to keep being compliant, to raise the bar and deliver something.
That's really interesting. I just want to stop you there for a second. So you have the first step, which is Excel. Then you have Excel with macros. Then you have an ERP, and then you have to build something internally. Is this correct?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I would say that though. Yeah, okay. that could be the way that you can see from years ago until where we are right now, right?
Can you share or can you tell us a little bit more about your experience? I know that you are migrating some of the processes that you had. You had a migration to Microsoft Navision.
Yeah, so actually around 3 years ago, I joined a food delivery company, marketplace. And then when I joined the company, I found out that they were like doing everything with macros. And we were like, okay, that's good. But it was also error prone, right? So we were into, okay, let's build something in a tool that we already have, like let's launch some kind of MVP. And always ERPs, the first, I think, use case of ERPs are bookkeeping, right? So we talked with some people and they said, no, we can build something to do this accounts payable, accounts receivable process as in the ERP with no problem. So yeah, let's go with it. And I start with launching the invoicing process in 16 countries for this food delivery company. We started with smaller countries and we started doing some tests and then everything was more automated. Of course, by automation, you say at the very beginning by clicking on a button and then something happens and then you click on the second one and another action happens and so on until you finalize the process. But it was quicker than using macros that even at some point they will fail because then you know that Excel, for instance, is limited to 1 million rows. So whenever you need to process something with more than 1 million rows, then a problem will happen. That's when you have a problem, right?
I just wanted to ask you something because you mentioned this. So the problem with the macros was with the errors. So it was like error prone. Like what happened when you have errors in the things that you're calculating?
So in those cases, for sure we needed to do it manually, right? So you were more into, okay, let's open multiple files, then let's sum the columns, and let's do this. Going back again, right, into with four macros, with manual things. And
instead of taking days, it could take weeks.
Yeah, indeed. Days, weeks, yeah. Then with macros, it will take you days, and then with the automation, it could take you some hours, and even with the current technology, it could take you some minutes only, right, to go through this process.
Okay. So back to the ERP migrations, like you started to have some processes built on top of the ERP. How was it going?
Yeah, so we started first by just issuing invoices and the documents, and then we build. Well, first we do the calculations, then we start building the templates. So just to be compliant, there is where complexity will come up because you need to adapt sometimes a standard template for each market, languages, or even some specific requirements by tax authorities. So all of these requirements need to be like met or checked in order to finally launch. So we started by the invoicing process. Then we were using a chart of account, a general one across the entire company. So basically it was good because you didn't have to set up a chart of accounts for each of the single entities that we were implementing on the ERP. So we started by that. Then we then start automating the processes. Like, okay, we have a file that it's been imported. That's the input that we need in the ERP to generate invoices. Okay, let's automate this process. So we implemented some job queues. So 4 a.m. every day, the files were generated, and then the import process started. So then when you join, you enter, turn on your computer 10 a.m., you're having all the data there, and you just need to start clicking and issuing and going through the process. And last stage of that, it was more into, okay, if now this import process is working, why don't we try to issue the invoices, at least some draft invoice that needs to be approved automatically. And then when this operator, this user was turning on their computer because they needed to check do the invoicing process, they were already at the stage there where they just needed to approve. To check, of course, that data was there, that there was no missing file, because when you start automating something, then some problems will also come into this equation, right? Like downtimes or missing files or failures on the system itself, like on the automation itself, that could happen, right? So
I just wanted to mention something. So I used the Free Now app a couple of times. When we talk about invoicing, and we mean me getting an invoice. Okay.
Yeah, you get an invoice for the service that was rendered. You actually get two invoices because as a marketplace, you're just the intermediary between two parties, right? The user and in this case, the driver. Also, marketplace monetize by charging a fee, or what you call a platform fee.
Okay.
So that's why you receive two documents for each of these two services that were rendered.
Out of curiosity, do you self-bill the taxi drivers?
Not actually.
I was just wondering, as a marketplace, because then you need to pay them, right?
Exactly.
And I guess they need to issue an invoice, or
no. So actually, in this case, we're just let's say we consider them as partners, right? So
okay.
And we are our value proposition is like, you don't need to issue the invoices. You just need to get people from A to B and make the process as smooth as possible, right? The hailing process is...
So you take care of all this complexity.
Exactly. And issuing invoices not only for the company, but also for the partners, and making sure that all of these meet the SLAs and happens right after you get out of the tap. You for sure you get the email. Once you get off the tap, then if you refresh your email a few minutes later, you will be having your documents or the invoices in your inbox waiting for you.
That's pretty cool. Like, what are like the top 3 or top 4 challenges that you have with invoicing?
Volume, first of all,
Volume.
for sure. Yeah. Then I'll say that keeping the calculations up to date and making sure that everything is fine, because it's marketplaces, and also as this is a new business, right? There's always legislation changes, so you need to deal with those changes and reduce as much as possible the time to market delivery of the feature, right? So sometimes this also impacts how you do other calculations, and I would say that that's the second. And the third one will be to, well, as a global team that's covering multiple countries, to manage the expectations of solving problems in real time, right? So it's not only one country where you're having a requester asking you to, okay, I'm having some issues with the invoices, or I'm having some issues with the information that it's been sent to the ERP, so I can do the bookkeeping process and so on. All of this, sometimes it impacts more than one market. So internally, it's one of the main reasons of, main challenge, right, of the day-to-day.
Okay. And how far are you, or like, what is your stage in the current, like, evolution of your fintech infrastructure? Like, are you still relying on ERP, or you just decided that for your stage, you need something different?
Well, I started with ERPs, and I found out that I was more into, like, just when you talk about ERPs, it's like I was more into Microsoft Navision, right? So actually 2017 version, so very limited scope, right? And then in the former company, there was a plan to switch from Navision to another ERP, and then I needed to learn it and everything, and it was like whole different thing, and I was more into, okay, but again, if ERPs are good, but it's more of a baseline that you can use to build something on top, and then even at some point you need to deprecate that solution because it doesn't fit your requirements. Why don't I specialize myself into in-house products, right? And I think that's the new, I would say, that's the new opportunity around the globe and different companies, like when they're having very big processes that they need to achieve in such short deadlines. I believe that this is the new ways of fixing them, like building something in-house that meets your requirements, and sometimes it's also, it's in the long run, it's the best solution because you keep your own updates, you keep everything on your own internally, you maintain it instead of following what the company or the ERP that you purchased. You need to follow the instructions, and you need to buy some updates, and cost saving. I think at the end, it's can be the answer for that. Yeah.
Like, to be honest, I talked and I interviewed a lot of people, and I still have to find someone with a good experience with an ERP. Like, yeah, like sure it works, but it doesn't really do what we expect. Or we bought this like 2 years ago. They're still implementing this. We have no idea what it's gonna.
Totally, and it's very normal that you buy an ERP, the company spend a lot of money, and then it fails. I think there are a lot of cases from big companies, some of them in the US, that they try to implement something and invest millions of dollars, and it was not even possible.
Let's go back to scalability. Yeah. So let's say that you're a new marketplace, or you're a company, a platform, you're a startup, and then you start growing. Like, how would you approach that? Okay, it's time to scale. It's time to have processes. It's time to automate this stuff.
I would say that more is operationally speaking, what is needed to keep our business alive. That's what I will tackle first. Then I will go into, am I compliant? Do I need to change something to be compliant? yes, no, okay. And then it's where, for sure, when you deliver the MVP, you cover the operational part. There are some still missing pieces of the puzzle that is still being done manually. So I was focus myself into automating those. And then it's just a matter of iterating, right, on the product itself, on the tool itself, making sure that it's up to date with the business needs.
Okay. Is there anything most that you would consider if the company is operating globally, and globally can be globally like all clients, but also just in Europe, because when you work in Europe, you have around 25, 27 different countries you can work with?
Well, I would say that, yes, sometimes also there is where, let's say, you also have some specific market requirements, and sometimes building something in-house is not the solution, right? So you also need to partner with external parties. Like, let's talk about a little bit of electronic invoicing that in Portugal needs to be done in real time, same as in Croatia, for example, these two countries in Europe. And potentially that requires a connection directly with the tax authority, even in some cases to get some permission to be able to send this information. And this take a lot of time, resources. When I said resources, it's not only the headcount, but it's also when you're trying to say yes to everything, right? So it's moving away something else that it could potentially bring more revenue or growth to the company, right? So in those cases, I believe that when you're working, when you have a global scope, you need to also find some partners to support you on some key processes where the implementations are quite complex and requires a lot of attention.
So we just started 2022. Like, what are the top priorities that, a fintech product manager have?
If you think like from a global perspective, right now as 2023, I think that due to this situation of inflation rates or interest rates hiking all the time, right? I believe that cost saving, it's one of the top three. How can we save money without jeopardizing our processes, right? And the quality of the features that we deliver or the services that we are rendering. Second, so then I would tip it into, okay, let's keep delivering new products, new features to our company, because at the end, 2023 will come with new countries that we are launching, or new business verticals that we are also need to take care of the process, automating manual processes, because even that we're in 2023, you can still have something that is currently being done manually, right? And it's a matter of where to start.
Now I have to ask you, what is the percentage of processes that you have automated?
Currently, it's quite high, actually. Yeah, I would say that there are some processes like accounts receivable where you can automate, but then accounts payable, you might get invoices in different formats from different companies. So for sure, then you can have some OCR tools that can support you on scaling and speeding up the process. But at the end, it's still being manual. Also on the payment side, I think that the outbound payments, automating those processes are quite challenging, because you need to partner with different entities, with different banks, and then sometimes also you're facing, even that you're operating in Europe and you could have same format in some markets when it comes to the payout file and so on. In some other markets, it's totally different. So it's building again something new from the scratch. Also, sometimes the partner that you have in that specific market for the payout process do not support such kind of automated solution. So you're limited there. And I would say it's quite hard, but around 90% overall. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned account receivable and account payable. I guess that for account receivable, your process looks more or less pretty simple. Like you book, like a transport, like a taxi driver, then you get paid, and then you create the invoice, and then you're pretty much done.
Normally marketplaces are you charge the user. You just charge a fee, like just for the service that you render to that user. Then on the other hand, you have the partner that at the end you are their partner as well. So you also charge them something for the service that you render for the platform itself to connect them with the user. So this kind of two processes, right? At the end, it's just issuing an invoice or two invoice to the different parties that are involved in the process or in the service. And
do you see any challenge with the current process that you have in place?
Legislation, I think that or different, different rules coming from each government. Even that we are in the European Union, sometimes when you talk about the taxi world, it's not sometimes it's just the same rule across the whole country. No, it should be different also in a city level, right? So that's where you need to handle these different rules and apply it on the system and make sure that it works perfect, right? So potentially, that the different changes from legislation and rules and how do we need to, in this case, the mobility space needs to work in the different cities. Mainly that.
Because you mentioned the taxing part, do you create a tax engine internally? Because of the rule that you have to comply with?
No. Okay. Still like this marketplace. So for sure that's the good thing. Also in some other markets, PHV also exists. So the private hire vehicle. But those are different rules than in the taxi one. So you need to take these two into account. And sometimes you change. Yeah.
You do this as a part of your team, or like you took care of this directly?
It's a very decentralized organization. I think that from the fintech side, we take care of inbound and outbound payments. We also handle the issuance of the documents for our, as a marketplace, as when it comes to, for example, a taxi driver and a passenger. We have kind of a hybrid process. It's both accounts payable and accounts receivable, right? Because we receive for our commission or for our fee for the service that was rendered, but also we pay out because the inbound payment that when you charge the user, it's actually the platform that is charging, not the driver or the partner itself, right? So in that case, you need to also manage or you need to handle these two processes. So, and last but not least, the output of these processes are the input for other teams such as tax, for VAT declarations, or accounting for the bookkeeping process. So we are a strategic partner, at least for those two. Treasury to release the payments or make sure that maintain our cash flows. So all of this is where it's kind of it's kind of a tech team, but at the end it's very close to finance, right?
I mean, you're sitting at the bottom of some core functionality like getting paid and pay, which makes like I think fintech, especially for marketplaces and platform, extremely interesting. You mentioned you have all your stakeholders, like you mentioned finance, you mentioned tax team, you mentioned treasury. How do you communicate with these teams? Because like you have a lot of transactions, so I guess it's not just an email, hey, you need to pay them.
No, so at the end, for sure, it's a decentralized organization, and also processes are decentralized. So I think that from my perspective and my experience, ERPs are perfect for accounting, for example. But then when it comes to handle these invoicing processes, these billing processes, there is where complexity comes up. So we have a separate tool for that. And then we also, let's say, build integrations to send those data sets from system A to system B. And then we also need to, let's say, build some kind of file or output that treasury can use to do their to do their part of the payout process, for example. And last but not least, for those specific markets that I already mentioned before, Croatia, Prino is not operating in Croatia, but from my knowledge, but in case of Portugal, where we have electronic invoicing, there are also APIs that are used, integrations that we use to send information to tax authorities and keeping day-to-day operations in control, right? So it's a lot of responsibilities and processes that needs to be synchronized.
You mentioned this a couple of times, like e-invoicing, and you mentioned that Portugal and Croatia, they have the real-time requirement, but from what I understood, it's going to be pretty much the same for all the other countries in Europe. Like sooner or later, everyone is going to adopt this.
Indeed. And because for sure that the one that is rendering the service sometimes is taking the opportunity to not declare something, and I believe that that's where we're going that's the direction where all countries will be going, to ensure that, well, at least tax authorities ensure that they're not missing any revenue recognition for their citizens or companies for each of these markets. So
I was reading about DAC 7. I don't know if you heard this from Europe about the...
Oh yeah, this new rule to present the figures and so on. But that one is, I think that it's more of a reporting rule, right? More of a, you need to report or income and other relevant information to the tax authority on a yearly basis. I think it is.
Yeah, I think this year is going to be the first year, and but exactly. Still, you need to track all the transactions and the partner.
Yeah. A good thing is that when you're also having decentralized processes, is that you can store this data and in the cloud, right? And that's, I think you have limitations but when you go to an ERP, then storing this data and having these records in that tool, in the long run, it will delay or it will slow down the system too much. That's where you are.
Okay. It feels you have a lot of experience, like good and bad, with ERP. Like, how should people approach the ERP thing? Because what I usually hear is, okay, we reach a scale where QuickBooks or, I don't know, Xero don't work anymore. Like, okay, what is the next step? And usually the answer, okay, is Oracle NetSuite, is, I don't know if you're big enough, SAP, or maybe Microsoft. But like, how would you approach this apart from the hype that maybe ERP can have?
I would say that it depends on the size of the company, right? So the size of the company will define the size of their processes. And basically, I would say that there are some ERPs that are worthy, like there are some open source ERPs that you can use, like Odoo, for example, where you can build something without, let's say, having this big integration and need to talk with the owner of this ERP, like I need to partner with Microsoft or I need to buy a certified extension to do this process and so on. So that's good. But once the company reaches a size that, of course, greater than 1 million lines in an Excel, but once it reaches this bigger size where you're handling, I will say that 5 million orders per month, around that, then for sure you need to scale at least a little bit the process, and that could still remain on the ERP. But when you are talking with the ERP people, like, okay, it's going really slow, let's do something. Sometimes it starts like, let's put more resources into the system where this ERP is running. But then you're also still growing as a company, so this will become a problem in the short term again. And then when you are about, okay, let's revamp the process, it's where complexity comes up, because the ERP was mainly designed to do what it's doing. So you don't have that much, let's say, possibility of, okay, let's change this, let's change this part of the process to do something else, let's do this with in a different way. So that's my experience with ERPs. I have found like, okay, but there's some ideas that we can take into account and build on the ERP to revamp the process. But when you talk with developers, they're like, but that's not how the system works. So you run into a limitation and you need to or change the ERP or move to a new version or find something else.
Yeah, usually what I hear from other people is, no, we use the ERP only as a general ledger. Like our accounting is there, but we don't build processing on top of that because we had bad experiences in the past.
Exactly. Indeed. And long story short, that's the truth. That's the truth.
Okay.
So,
I mean, we were talking about taxes and new requirements from Europe. Like, how would you tackle like different markets requirements? Like, how would you launch, I don't know, a new country or?
Well, for sure. First thing that one of the most important things that I would say of launching a new country is to make sure that, for instance, from a commercial perspective, the people that is in the field, like launching this new country, understand how the company works. Just to, let's say, ensure some baseline of standard processes to avoid building something fully new from the scratch. And then whenever you're building a tool, whenever you're building a feature, whenever you are implementing something new on top of the system that you already have, you need to always keep in mind the flexibility, right? So this can be used tomorrow in somewhere else. So I would say that it's quite easy. But it requires a lot of alignment and cross-functional. It's a cross-functional project. Like, we recently on Free Now. Recently migrate or rebrand the company that we had in Greece. We Free Now did an M&A and bought a company that is called Beat Mobility, and around 5 months ago, approximately, we migrate this platform to Free Now because we were having like a different brand name in Europe, and we wanted to have all the markets within the same brand. So it required a lot of alignment between different teams because we needed to move everything from one platform to another, right? So it was quite a challenging project.
I guess, okay, we bought the company, we changed the name, now we need to change the invoicing, now we need to change the contracts.
We need to migrate the data, right? And data should be in a different system from the one that we're currently using, so how can we ensure that we can use that data? Then you will run into little requirements such as storing invoices for X number of years. It depends on the market. And all of this is part of the migration project. They're quite interesting.
How long did it take, like from the moment in which they said, okay, we're going to buy the company to we need to migrate and the migration has to be done by X?
I don't have the full input as actually when I joined Free Now, the project was already ongoing.
Okay.
Then for sure M&A happened, but then COVID pops up. So they stopped the rebranding and changing the name of the company during some period of time. And once we start, let's say we decided to kick it off again and to make it happen and let it till the end, it took us around 4 months to make it happen. But there was already some work done from the past, but it still was quite challenging.
Okay. It seems you're working with a lot of external providers also. So you're building some of the internal services with the help of external providers. Like if you have any suggestion you might want to share with startups or companies that are building like tools for fintech team, like is there anything?
Well, actually, from my experience, I have been working with a company that's called Invoice Express. That's the one that it provides us the API with the Portuguese Tax Authority, so to do the invoice certification process. And they actually have really great service. And also, we have different PSPs, but they're not in my specific scope. So I am not that quite up to date with which one will be the best recommendation. But for sure, there are quite a few, such as like Braintree, for example, that offer a great service.
Okay. So great service is the thing you should focus on.
Yeah, always. I
Great
think
service.
that put the customer first and provide them the best service ever, right? So
Okay.
they start. Yep, go ahead.
No. I think it's time to wrap up, Marco. Are you ready for a rapid fire round of questions?
Of course.
Okay. So the best piece of advice you ever received, it can be career related or not.
Best piece of advice I can give, you mean? Like,
Yeah, like the best piece of advice you ever received can be career related, like a professional one.
I would say when it comes to finance, it's like, okay, the house can be on fire, but no one will die. So take time to decide how to move on and to work on your different responsibilities. Because at the end, if you take that time to build something in the good way, it will save you time in the future, rather than if you take you do a very fast decision-making process without enough research, then potentially in the future you will be working on that again and again and again and again, and it will take you more time.
So building the right process from the get-go.
Yeah, and we're not doctors, so no one will die.
Yeah, makes sense.
You make it from one day to another.
Okay. What book would you recommend to our audience?
I liked two, actually. One of them is High Output Management.
Mm-hmm.
And the second
From Andy
one...
Grove, right?
Yes. And the second one is product related. So I'll tell you the name. I started reading it. Yeah, it's called Inspired. Actually, I started reading it a few weeks ago. It's quite good. It's with the product managers from the US. Actually, they explain to you how to build the best tool ever. So I really liked it. So far, it's been great. So those are my two recommendations.
Good one. What's your main passion outside of work?
That's a good one. I'm actually really enjoy having time around with my family and friends. So just could be just sitting here in the in having lunch or going out to the mall, something with them, just enjoying having them close. That is my main passion, but also up to cryptocurrencies and investments in the stock market. So I also try to learn a little bit every day about that. Trying to build my retirement.
Now I need to ask, what's your take on cryptos?
I'll say that for sure I would say that fiat is the ERP and and crypto are the new era. So it's like the in-house tool, so something new and fully revamped and offering a lot of advantages, not only to the normal people, but also to the same companies or entities that are currently handling these processes. Like you can take advantage of the blockchain technology to scale your processes. Like for example, there's Ripple could be a good example of how can you handle overseas transactions, right, from one country to another and really low cost, and also moving these funds from A to B in a matter of minutes. That currently, if you go to a traditional banking, it will take you, it can take you even days, right? And we're in 2023, so.
No, you're right. Moving money is still pretty hard. It's not that easy.
And a lot of cost when you want to proceed with one of these type of transactions, right? So.
Yeah. Anything you're learning right now? It can be professional, but also not.
I think that professionally speaking, I'm learning right now a lot about these in-house products. How can you keep your products up to date and keep scaling your processes based on the technology that every day it's popping out? Like, hey, there's a new system, a new way of doing things, and even that I'm more into the product or finance related topics. I truly believe that finance is going into that direction when tech is going to be an strategic partner, and you need to know about tech so you can deal with your day-to-day processes. So yeah. I said that I'm learning a lot about tech, how to use it on the finance related topics or initiatives. I'm very happy on that.
I'm curious, like when you say I'm learning about tech, it's learning about tech in technology in general, experimenting maybe with no code or low code platform.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So if people want to find out more about Free Now, they can visit the website free-now.com. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
LinkedIn, for sure.
Okay. So I'm going to share your profile in the show notes. Marco, thank you for joining me today. It was a pleasure and wishing you the best.
And you, Christian.